Blessed are the eyes that see what you see. For I tell you, many kings and prophets have desired to see what you see, and have not seen it. To hear what you hear, and have not heard it. I thank you, Father, for hiding these things from the learned and the wise, and revealing them to the innocent and the simple.
It started as a chant outside Miami Beach City Hall. Inside, it turned into an outcry.
The plane went over my house 11 times.
This woman says she lives in the Zika zone of Wynwood, where the insecticide Naled was used for weeks in early August. Naled is banned by the European Union, but the EPA's website says it has been used in this country since 1959 without posing unreasonable risks when applied according to the label. At high doses, however, it can overstimulate the nervous system, causing nausea, dizziness, or confusion.
My tongue for 4 hours felt so tight and shaky, I was about to go to the emergency room.
And that's what these residents of Miami Beach are worried about.
And in Miami-Dade County, folks.
The Miami-Dade County Mayor, Carlos Jimenez, who orders the spraying, told the crowd public health experts have assured him the amount of Naled used is harmless to humans and has proven effective in Wynwood at reducing the mosquito population.
We cannot just pick and choose where to spray. There is a science to this.
What about other experts?
Many people in the crowd shouted they didn't believe the science that shows pregnant women with Zika are at risk of delivering babies with microcephaly.
You don't believe there's a link. The problem is, what if you're wrong?
Dr. Christine Curry is an OBGYN who's delivered a baby with microcephaly and spoke directly to the crowd.
Zika is real, and while we don't understand it fully, that is not a reason to dismiss its impact.
There's been more devastation and unrest in Syria's Aleppo province, where activists say at least 10 people were killed in a new airstrike where a suspected chlorine gas attack hit yesterday. Now we know the fumes killed at least one child, a 13-year-old girl, and a 29-year-old man. Medics treated dozens of people for breathing difficulties following the attack in the opposition-controlled neighborhood.
Security forces in Afghanistan have closed streets in Kabul after a car bomb hit the city center. The blast just came hours after a pair of suicide attacks claimed by the Taliban near the Defense Ministry complex. At least 24 people have been killed in the twin blast, including high-ranking security officials and an army general, while more than 90 others were wounded. Gunmen who followed the initial attack appeared to have barricaded themselves in a building in a city center. No individual or group has claimed responsibility for the car bombing yet. The Pentagon has said a Russian fighter jet came within 10 feet of a U.S. Navy surveillance plane over the Black Sea, and the U.S. Department of Defense said its plane was conducting routine operations in international airspace on Wednesday. And the Russian Defense Ministry said in response that Moscow had to scramble Crimea-based Su-27 fighter jets to intercept the U.S. spy plane. It said the plane was attempting to approach the Russian airspace over the Black Sea. The ministry also said the U.S. plane was flying with its transponders switched off. And according to the Pentagon, a Russian Su-27 flanker first maintained a distance of 30 feet, then close to within 10 feet of the U.S. P-8 Poseidon electronic signals aircraft. The intercept occurred at 11:20 a.m. local time and lasted about 19 minutes. Russia said the U.S. plane made 2 attempts to approach its airspace. The U.S. Defense Department says one of its Navy ships has changed course after a close encounter with an Iranian craft in the Central Gulf on Sunday. The Pentagon says the Iranian fast attack vessel sailed within 91 meters of the USS Firebolt, forcing the 53-meter U.S. ship to change course. The U.S. adds this was at least the 4th such incident in less than a month.
Fears are mounting that actions by Iran could lead to mistakes. In August, a U.S. Navy patrol craft fired warning shots toward an Iranian fast attack vessel that approached 2 U.S. ships. At the time, Iran's defense minister said the vessels were just doing their job.
Moscow putting on a huge show of force. War games from land, air, and sea. In Crimea, the territory Russia annexed from Ukraine a little over 2 years ago.
The Russians are sending a very clear message with these large-scale and complex military drills. Their forces are entrenched here in Crimea, and they're ready to fight anytime.
The maneuvers are called Kafkas 2016 and take place not only in Crimea, but in Russia's entire southern military district right on the border with Ukraine. The drills involve more than 12,000 soldiers, dozens of fighter jets flying mock dogfight missions, strike aircraft hitting ground and sea targets, and land forces in an amphibious assault. Still, the Defense Ministry spokesman insists it's not a provocation. But they come at a time of heightened tensions with the US and NATO over the annexation of Crimea and other issues. The Russian Air Force intercepted a US P-8 naval aircraft in the region just as the drills were getting underway. And only 3 weeks ago, Russia accused Ukraine of trying to smuggle operatives into Crimea for sabotage operations, a claim Kiev denies. The Kafkas military drills will likely cause more unease in Ukraine and Eastern European NATO member states. Russia's military chief of staff says the initial assessment is that they went smoothly.
If things had gone differently, we might be telling you tonight about another terror attack in Paris, but police broke it up. Today, they said the suspects were acting under direct orders from ISIS in Syria.
6 gas canisters intended to be a crude car bomb discovered just blocks away from the Notre Dame Cathedral. Police said the suspects ran off after failing to set it ablaze. Yesterday, they arrested 3 women, including a 19-year-old who was shot in the leg after she stabbed an officer with a knife. The arrests mark the first time that an all-female team has made up the main operatives in a suspected terror plot. Today, French prosecutor Francois Milan said they were taking orders directly from ISIS command in Syria, and that the militant group intends to mobilize female followers to wage attacks in Europe. The women were already on the radar of security services for wanting to join ISIS on the battlefield in Syria. Instead, they decided to take the battlefield to Europe, where they've allegedly forged complex connections to terror networks. And although this attack failed, it's further evidence that France remains the #1 European target for ISIS and its followers, with a series of attacks in the last year and a half that have taken the lives of more than 230 people.
North Korea says it has conducted what it calls a higher-level nuclear warhead test explosion.
On North Korean state television, the test was celebrated as a success. It was the country's most powerful explosion yet, and another sign of progress for its nuclear program. President Obama, just back from a week-long trip to Asia, called the test provocative and destabilizing. China, North Korea's most reliable partner, urged all relevant countries to act carefully. In New York, an emergency session of the United Nations Security Council was called. U.S. Ambassador Samantha Power.
North Korea is seeking to perfect its nuclear weapons and their delivery vehicles so they can hold the region and the world hostage under threat of nuclear strike.
This is North Korea's second nuclear test this year and the latest in a string of recent provocations. Leader Kim Jong-un has also ramped up the country's ballistic missile capacity and launched 3 earlier this week during the G20 summit in China. The fear is that with each test comes better capabilities. Jamie Metzel is a senior fellow at the Atlantic Council.
If North Korea continues on the path that it's on, it is likely that within a decade they will have a deliverable nuclear weapon able to hit the continental United States.
Every time we condemn them, they come back at us with another test.
Joshua Pollack is an expert on nuclear and missile proliferation.
If you read their statements, in the last few days, I think it has become increasingly clear that they have more planned for us even before the end of this year.